Wendy has got to be the simplest character in the game, but even though she is so simple, there is a lot to her. She is a basic survivor that is weak on her own but has a consistent ally in her sister. She does not take much to understand how to play and be effective with. That's why I think Wendy is probably one of the best characters in the game. Just because she can do a lot of things without much effort. She feels like you can just exist in areas where there is constant threats and just be okay. Sometimes you could even straight just AFK and be safe. No other character really allows you to do this. She is one of the best characters for collecting food. You have so much you wouldn't know what to do with it, and because of that you can easily take advantage of a lot of pre-existing mechanics in the game to help her out. And you get to have all of this in a nice simple easy package of Abigail. So what is it Wendy can do? By herself, not much. She innately has a 25% damage reduction penalty, meaning that she takes more hits in order to kill things. But she does have some things that'll help her out. When she is fighting with Abigail, she does 15% more than standard players. The math for this is strange though, because Abigail is the only mob that puts a weakness debuff on creatures, meaning she can make creatures she attacks take 10% more damage from everything, even from things that are not affected by damage multipliers. But in addition to this 10%, Wendy has a bonus 40% damage bonus on attacking enemies that are cursed by Abigail. In addition, she also has a reduction in the amount of sanity she loses from auras and darkness. This is mostly great against darkness sanity, since for most characters they lose 5 sanity a minute, whereas Wendy you only lose 3.75. Unfortunately, a top hat does not actually negate sanity from darkness. Even if the meter does not show you draining sanity, you actually still are very slowly, meaning you will eventually go insane in caves with only top hats. I have to bust that right away because that is something talked a lot by Wendy players, which is actually not true. Also, having reduced sanity loss from auras is always a plus, because the common gameplay of Wendy is usually her surrounded by a lot of negative sanity auras, especially all the time she talks about death. And death is what she's good at. Thanks to Abigail, Wendy is the character that has the best kill to death ratio of any character. Abigail is basically a blender. She will shred small things into even more smaller things. She is a follower that is tethered to Wendy and can be summoned and unsummoned by Wendy, giving Wendy 15 sanity each and having her lose 15 sanity when desummoned. If Abigail dies, Wendy will instead lose 30 sanity, and Abigail gets reset to level 1 as well. Abigail has 3 different levels. For each level she'll have more max health and a brighter light. At level 1 she has 150 HP with no light. At level 2 she has 300 HP and small enough light to avoid Charlie. And at level 3 she has 600 HP and a bigger light source. This light source is actually one thing that people really disregard when playing Wendy. It's probably one of the best things that you have playing as Wendy. There are many things that you don't have to think about because Abigail is there with a small light source. You can also still do work at night if you just position Abigail correctly. Even if she floats away, she will come back to you. And even with nighttime combat, you can use Abigail's for light because when she's attacking, she won't move. And if you have just no light in general, you can dance with Abigail and she will always stay next to Wendy, meaning you can just sit at night and wait till morning. Or if you are adventurous, you can rile up Abigail and cause her to run away from Wendy. You can instead use this to traverse the map with only your sister guiding you. In order to get to this point though, Abigail needs to level up, and it takes a whole day to level up, meaning after 2 days you'll have a max Abigail. You can speed this up by 4 times if you have a cistern filled up, meaning you can have a fully charged Abby in as little as 4 minutes. But more often than not, you won't really need the charge speed of the cistern. Abigail only often dies against bosses. She is weak against strong AoE and fast attacks that bypass her shield. However, the cistern itself does give a 25% sanity aura, so you can use it as a sanity spot with other sanity buildings and structures. Now on to Abby's combat. She attacks 1 time per 1 second, doing different damage based on what time of day it is. 15 during the day, 25 at dusk, and 40 at night. She does this damage in a radius of 3 units, which are pretty dang good, meaning she's able to damage most creatures before they can get an attack on her. But more often than not, Abigail will run face first into these creatures and get as close as possible. It's not Abby's fault, it's just a thing all creatures do, even if they have the range to deal damage. The only ones that don't do this are Spitters and Berger, but because of this, Abby is always going to snuggle everything and potentially take damage. This only happens if she aggroes though. Abigail will automatically target certain creatures without any input from Wendy or the creatures she's attacking. Most commonly these are bosses and monsters, which makes sense because they're often going to be aggressive innately. But for some reason she has extreme hatred for small creatures. Moles, rabbits, crustaceans, frogs, she will indiscriminately attack them. That's because because these creatures are considered prey creatures in the code, and Abby will always attack monster creatures or prey creatures that enter her range, despite if she is in defensive or offensive mode. Abigail gets summoned in defensive mode. This is when she looks calm, and offensive mode is when you rile her up and she looks angry. Defensive mode makes Abby stay closer to Wendy, lowering how far she will be able to try and attack creatures. If Wendy gets too far away, Abby will stop attacking to try and get closer to Wendy. In offensive mode, Abigail will actively avoid Wendy, running away from her and keeping her distance. She will do this so long she is not currently attacking something. She will also attack more things than she normally would not attack, such as neutral animals and insects. The aggression of Abigail is a bit strange because she has varying timers for her stances as well as re-aggression based on what type of creatures are being attacked, or if Wendy is being attacked. One thing to remember is that Abigail remembers her last target, if she was unsummoned while in combat. This is normally not a problem because Abby will usually stay near Wendy when summoned back in again, and she will still be in defensive mode. However, if the creature you unsummoned Abigail on is still too close, she'll go back into the fight. This is very important for certain fights because she can potentially get out of position when you need Abigail to be in a certain position. This happens a lot while in offense mode too. Every 6 seconds while fighting, she could potentially move to get away from Wendy when she is re-aggroing, potentially putting her in a bad situation. And positioning is the most important thing about Wendy and Abigail. Where you and Abigail are at during a fight can really determine how well the fight goes. Not only that, but who takes aggro first also plays a big role. Abigail is pretty slow and easily stunned, so a lot of creatures are able to catch her and do damage if she is running away and not close to Wendy. So you have to really commit to more things or ensure that you unsummon Abby if she's not in a safe position. When to take aggro and when not to take aggro is important for Wendy players. A lot of times it's easier to take aggro as Wendy than lead him to Abigail so that way she does not take as much damage. Here's a simple example. If Wendy attacks a beehive, Abigail doesn't take damage. But if Abigail is the one that initiates the attack, Abby does take damage. Other instances would also be with worms. A lot of times if you don't position Abigail correctly, a late game worm wave can really take her out. Other times it's better to let Abigail take aggro because then you'll take less damage as Wendy, and also increase damage output. Think like tall birds and tentacle. These creatures won't change aggro and they can be easily dispatched. Positioning is primarily used to take advantage of Abigail's shield. Every time she is hit, she gains invincibility for half a second. And you want to make sure that all creatures that don't get stun locked by her attack at the same time so that way she does not take more damage than she needs to. Abigail is really weak in constant barrages of random attacks, but if you're able to sync them up, you can take on a lot more than other characters can. It's important to remember that when you play as Wendy, you have 2 health bars to manage, so you should be using both to the fullest. You can do that by taking advantage of Abigail's potions. In order to get these, you need to help pip spooks which spawn near graves. They will give you morning glories after completing their quests, and these can be used to help with Abigail's survival, as well as her damage output. Most of the potions are pretty simple. The first are the healing potions. You got one that boosts her base regen by 3 times and lasts a whole day, which is good for just constant damage that's taken here and there. Another healing potion, which is a quick full heal, which can be useful for boss fights, but it's much more expensive to craft. Next are her shield potions, which will extend the duration of her invulnerability to 1 second. This is what the basic shield potion does. And the more powerful shield potion makes any creatures that hit the shield take damage, 20 every time they hit the shield. These are only really useful when the timing for seeking out mobs is pretty hard to achieve. Something like pigs, frogs, or merms. And finally, her utility potion. Nightshade is used to make Abigail do night damage at any time of the day. Great for Bee Queen and eking out extra damage during the day. And the next is Vigor Mortis, which boosts her speed by 75%, allowing her to catch up to Wendy and also kite in certain fights. Wendy is normally known for being really good at combat, but she's actually pretty good at avoiding it too, since you're able to control when Abigail exists and doesn't exist. You can use Abigail as a bait to move through dangerous areas or even move dangerous creatures without needing to worry about your own safety. Just have Abby aggro the creature, move them to an area and then desummon, and it's easy as that. She also has some unique interactions with magic items like staves and weather panes, primarily against structure type enemies. These are things like spider nests, lure plants, and tentacle pillars. If you use an ice staff on these, Abigail will continue to attack them until they are dead, and these are really useful for just clearing these creatures out. Wendy is such a simple character. She doesn't take that much to be good at, but really helps her is knowing what fights to take, and how to take advantage of the amazing follower that is Abigail. Wendy is good for most general combat in the game, but where she commonly struggles is bosses. This is mostly because Abigail would commonly die in these counters just because usually they have some form of AoE. But there are bosses that Wendy excels in, allowing her to take advantage of stronger items that normal players wouldn't be able to access. She also benefits the most from beefalo taming. It's just so good with her. It's primarily because beefalos are basically a regenerating weapon and armor that are also fast and help to bypass Wendy's lower damage. There's not much to talk about beefalos since they get talked to death, but just remember they are not the best for every situation. Wendy is definitely the easiest character to play. She gives you access to a lot of resources that other characters have to go out of their way to collect, and she has just a great team character role without needing to really compensate for doing anything. Though she may be bereaved of her sister, she can prevent many others to be lost in the darkness as well. Thank you all for watching Wendy. Because of how she works, many people love to play her. She is an easy character to play, but you have to keep in mind Abby. Abigail has a mind of her own sometimes, but once you understand how she works, you will become one of the best players on the team. With that, I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, this has been Tara, and take care.